Hello and welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, my name is Kelly and I'm an artist and I enjoy sharing my creative projects with you. I have some time to work on my donut case, and today I'm going to be working on attaching the doors to the back as well as making another tray of donuts to go inside. So it's not a ton of work, but it's been a while since I've worked on it, so I'm really excited to get started. So let's go ahead and get into it. Before I start on the doors and the donuts, I really need to do something about these glazed donuts from my last video. They've all been loose on this tray, and occasionally I'll tip over the donut case while working at my desk, and every time these things go flying everywhere. So I'm going to go ahead and start by gluing them down to the tray, but I think I'm going to leave a couple loose so that way when I have the boxes made later on down the road, I can still fill them with a dozen donuts. But this will at least keep my desk a little bit more clean. So let me go ahead and finish this up and then we'll move on to the doors. All right, moving on to the case doors. A couple videos ago, I mentioned that I ordered something off of Amazon for attaching the doors. And today is the day that I get to show you what that is. And here they are now. These tiny little hinges. So I got these little hinges off Amazon and I'm really hoping they're going to work for what I'm trying to do here. I'm going to start by gluing half of the hinge onto the panel, and I'm going to do that twice. So each door will have 2 hinges. Now I got those on and I'm going to go ahead and set them aside and let them dry for a little bit before I actually move on to putting them on the base. And in the meantime, I'm going to go ahead and start on the maple donuts that are going to be the next tray in the case. So for these donuts, I'm going to start by making rectangles out of my dough clay that I mixed. This is a mix of translucent white and yellow clay. Nothing too fancy, but I feel like it gives a good bakery vibe for these types of projects. I also went through and modified my donut cheat sheet from the round glazed donuts into these kind of maple bar shapes. I put it underneath my acrylic sheet so I can go ahead and work right on top of it. And it's a pretty simple shape to make, but I want to make sure that they're all going to fit on the trays together once they're baked in the oven. So I'm going to spend some time shaping these to make sure they're the right size. So I'm happy with the shapes I was able to make, and I've also actually ran out of clay, but that's okay because I don't actually plan on filling the trays completely. I want it to look like the store has been open and some of the donuts have been bought already, so the trays won't be completely full, but I don't know. I'm not really sure. Part of me really wants to make a full case. Part of me really wants to have it look like it's been open for a little bit. But what are your thoughts like on filling the trays versus leaving some space on them? Do you think it should look like the store just opened, or do you think the case should be completely filled every spot with a donut? Let me know in the comments below which one you think I should go with. I'm still kind of on the fence about that one. All right, those are all formed, and now comes the tricky part. I need to prep these for shading, and when you look at a donut, they often have a line around the center where the dough is lighter than the rest, so it doesn't get as golden brown right on that line. And so I like to try and recreate that by wrapping thread around the donut bar, and then I'll shade it with the pastels, but the thread will protect that area. This can be a little bit of a tedious part of making the donuts, but I feel like it's worth it. I really like the final look that I get, and I don't actually currently have any thin tape that I can use, but maybe I should look into getting some of that because this thread can be very difficult to get in place. But I'm going to take the time today. I'm going to get each one of these wrapped, and then once they're all wrapped, we can move on to the fun part of shading them with pastels. All right, those are all finished up, and now we're ready to go ahead and move on to shading. And I like to use a cake nail with a piece of sandpaper taped to it. And then when I add the bar to it, I'll just kind of gently press it down onto the sandpaper so some of that texture will get on the bottom of the donut. And then using a dry paintbrush, I'm just going to start adding colors in nice thin layers. And I tend to stick to yellows, oranges, and browns, and I'll add some darker browns, but I do want to warn you just to be careful not to use too much, because the darker colors really can take over a piece if you're not careful, and I've experienced this firsthand. So when I do get into the darker colors, I'm going to be very gentle and only try and get a tiny bit, and only get it in the areas where I want it. Overall, I'm really happy with how these are turning out, and I think they're ready to go in the oven now. So I'm going to go ahead and put them in, and while they're in the oven, we're going to go ahead and move on to working on adding the doors to the case. Actually, before I move on and attach these, I need to actually trim them a little bit. I think they're slightly too wide, and when I close them, they kind of overlap each other. So I'm going to use the ruler and box cutter method from a few videos ago, and I'm just going to score each piece until it can break off easily. And this is a bit tricky because the pieces are so tiny, it's hard to get a hold of them and break them without damaging the rest of the piece. So I am going to score them multiple times to make sure I have a nice, good score going before I try and break this off. And this would probably be easier if I had some pliers to help with this part, but I don't have any handy right now, so I'm just going to go ahead and go for it. Okay, I got those all trimmed up, and I'm going to call that good. I think they might still overlap a little bit, but I'm not going to fuss about it too much. And originally I was planning to use a bead for the handle of the door, but I just realized that I don't actually have any beads that are small enough to work for this. So I'm going to have to try and find something around my house that will work. So one moment while I search for something. Okay, so I think I found something that will work. Well, two things. I have a perler bead from one of my kids' perler bead sets, and I also have a diamond from a diamond painting of mine. So I think what I'm going to do is glue the diamond onto the end of the perler bead right here to make it look like a little handle for the case, and hopefully that will work. All right, so these are super cute, and I'm very happy with how they turned out. I'm going to go ahead and let them dry for a little bit on the panels before I attach the doors to the case. And so while those dry, I'm going to go ahead and jump back to the donuts that just came out of the oven and work on making a maple glaze for the tops. All right, so for the maple glaze, I'm going to go ahead and use my liquid polymer clay that I always use for the glaze and frostings. And I'm going to put a little bit of that on my acrylic sheet here. And then I'm actually going to mix in some tan clay this time. Sometimes I use my chalk pastels to shade it, but I think for this, I have a nice tan color that will work well. So I'm going to go ahead and add that in. And then I'm just going to start mixing it until it's completely mixed and a nice thin consistency that will work for the maple glaze. All right, that's all mixed up and ready for the donuts to be dipped in. And I'm going to use tweezers for this part because I don't want to get it all over my fingers because then it just makes a mess all over the donuts. And so the tweezers, I feel like, make it a little bit cleaner, but it's still very difficult to use these. So as you can see, I'm going to try and kind of get it dipped in and then pull it out and get it to the pan without hopefully dropping each piece. I'm not sure what other people do, but if you have any tips to make this step easier, I would love to hear from you. Okay, so now those are all dipped and ready for the oven. And so I'm going to go ahead and get those in there, and then we'll do the final part with the doors on the case. All right, I'm going to try my best to line these up and mark where each hinge will be. That way I can add a little bit of glue in those spots. And then a second one here. And now I can gently lay the hinges on those spots. And hopefully they will glue down and attach like I'm thinking. All right, so that wraps up the video for today. I did make some pretty good progress, although it was very difficult. One of the doors gave me a bit of an issue with the hinges. I was having trouble getting them glued on and having them still work, and they were just really sticky. So that was kind of a pain, but I did get that sorted out, and this is the final result. Ta-da! As you can see, the doors do open. That one's the one that's a little sticky, but it does work. And then this one opens up wide. And they have the little perler beads that I used with the diamond from one of my diamond paintings. It's just an extra one that I glued on there to give them little handles. And they look super cute. And of course, I also have my maple bars that I made, which I'm super happy with how they turned out. The gloss glaze that I put on them gave them a really good realistic look, and I love how they look. So, and I have most of them glued down to the tray. Right now I have one that can come off. I think I might make a few more so that there's a few more that can be played with and put in boxes. But for now, that's what I have, and I'm super excited. I love how they look. I also glued down the glazed donuts, so there's 2 of them that can come off and be played with, but the rest of them are all glued down to the tray. And the reason I did this was multiple times already I've tipped the display case over on my desk, and these would go everywhere. And it was a big pain, and I didn't want to keep creating multiple trays of donuts just to have them falling everywhere and mixing up and all of that. So I went ahead and I glued them down, and then I just left a few loose for play. And I really like that. I think it's going to give it a really good look in the final case. And I also have decided on all the different types of donuts that I'm going to be making. So each little blue tab has a type of donut written on it, and I'll be able to pull a tray and make those donuts, and it will go in the case. So I'm really excited for these next few videos. They're probably going to be majority working with clay and making the donut shape. So if you like that kind of stuff, make sure you're subscribed to the channel and leave a comment down below letting me know what your favorite type of donut is so I can make sure it's on one of the trays. And I'll see you guys next time. Bye.